This video is brought to you by Battlezoo Eldamon. This expansion to Pathfinder 2nd Edition and D&D 5e is a Pokemon-style rule set that will allow all players to collect, befriend, train, and evolve 160 different Eldamon. Join the Kickstarter campaign for Battlezoo Eldamon today. Welcome to Battle Breakdown by How It's Played, the series that examines famous scenes from movies through the lens of a role-playing game and illustrates how those events might play out at the game table. In this edition, we'll be looking at a scene from 1981's Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark as if it was an encounter in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. In this first part of a two-part video series, we'll see how GM Spielberg runs Indy's travel into the tomb, and in part 2 of the series, we'll look at how he GMs Indy's exit from the tomb. We'll pick up the scene shortly after the start of the movie where Indiana Jones and his loyal sidekick Satopo are raiding an indigenous tomb to steal an idol of religious importance from the local natives so they can then sell it to an American museum for profit. Mechanically speaking, Indy is a solo player while Satopo is an NPC. Indy takes the lead in exploration mode and chooses to use the search exploration activity. This allows him to make perception checks while moving slowly to detect anything hidden in the area. Regardless of whether or not there is in fact anything hidden here, GM Spielberg rolls Indy's perception check in secret. Indy is an expert in perception and has a perception bonus of +10. So GM Spielberg rolls 1d20 plus 10 for a total of 22. There is, in fact, a trap hidden in this area, a variation of a common spear launcher trap that creatively uses a different trigger mechanism than a pressure plate. Per the stat block for this trap, a spear trap can be detected with a successful perception check against DC 20. Since Indy rolled a 22 on his check, and he is at least trained in perception, GM Spielberg tells him that he feels very suspicious about this shaft of light that's coming through the ceiling. Indy examines it further and discovers the hidden spear trap. He says he wishes to disarm the trap by moving into a safe place and waving his arm in front of the light to trigger it. GM Spielberg decides to treat this the same as disarming the trap, however it will not prevent the trap from automatically retracting and rearming itself after a few minutes. GM Spielberg has him roll a thievery skill check. Indy is an expert in thievery with a +11 bonus. He rolls 1d20 plus 11 for a total of 25, which is enough to beat the trap's disable DC of 18. The spear trap is safely triggered, allowing Indy and Satopo to continue deeper into the tomb. They next encounter an open 20-foot wide pit and far deeper than anyone wishes to find out. Since the pit is 20 feet across, it is too far for the characters to use the leap basic action to cross it. Instead, they will need to use the long jump application of athletics to cross the pit. The DC for a long jump is equal to the number of feet being jumped, so a 20-foot pit has a DC of 20. With an athletics bonus of +9, Indy has less than a 50-50 chance of success and isn't willing to risk the consequences of botching the roll and falling into a near bottomless pit. He tells GM Spielberg that he wants to examine the area and try to find any other options for crossing the pit. GM Spielberg rolls a perception check in secret and then tells Indy that the walls surrounding the pit are very rough with several handholds and there is a wide, sturdy root that extends above the pit. Indy thinks that root would be perfect for attaching a grappling hook and rope to, or even better, his trusty whip. GM Spielberg reasons that with a whip in place to swing on, this will be a little easier and he decides to use a simple DC. Trained proficiency sounds about right to him, so he calls this an athletics check versus DC 15 to safely swing across the pit. Indy rolls 1d20 and adds his athletic skill bonus of 9 for a total of 17, which is enough for him to safely cross the pit. He tosses the whip back and now it's Satopo's turn. He has an athletics bonus of +5 and rolls a 9 on the die for a total of 14, just barely missing the target of 15 and failing. Now this doesn't mean that he falls to his death, but he likely wouldn't have enough momentum to safely return to the other side of the pit. Thinking fast, Indy's player says he wants to grab him and pull him to safety. This isn't entirely hard-coded into the rules as written, but GM Spielberg thinks it's plausible. He decides to treat this as a grab and edge action, as is usually allowed when falling, but allows Indy to be the one who rolls it using his higher bonus. Typically, the DC for grab and edge is the same as the climb DC to climb up the edge, and in this case, GM Spielberg just decides to make things easy and call it a DC 15 check, the same as the check to swing across. Unlike jumping over the pit, which is an athletics check, grab and edge calls for a reflex save. Indy rolls 1d20 plus his reflex save bonus of plus 11 for a total of 18 and successfully catches Sadapo. Now this is how it worked in their game, but it's worth noting that if Indy's player had thought ahead, they could have either used the aid basic action to catch Sadapo or a ready action with the trigger of Sadapo failing his check. In the next chamber, they find the idol waiting atop a pedestal.
Honey, there is nothing to fear here. That's what scares me.
Doc Ock has never played a dungeon crawl before and assumes the area is safe and clear of traps, but Indy has his suspicions. He carefully examines the area and has GM Spielberg roll a perception check in secret. He does so and rolls a total of 23, which is enough to detect the presence of a spinning dart trap. He then makes a thievery check to disarm the trap, rolling a total of 24, which is enough to safely and dramatically render the trap harmless. But GM Spielberg chimes in that with his previous perception check, he didn't just find this one spinning dart trap, but the entire chamber appears to be littered with them. Far too many to safely disarm one at a time. Instead, Indy decides to try and cross the room without setting off any of the remaining traps. These spinning dart traps are 4th level, so GM Spielberg starts by setting the DC at 19 based on their level, but then increases it by 5 due to the very hard circumstance of having so many traps in the same area. This makes the final DC 24. Indy has an acrobatic skill bonus of plus 10, so he has his work cut out for him. He rolls 1d20 plus 10 and luckily gets a total of 26, enough to cross the chamber safely. Now standing before the idol, Indy's player doesn't even bother asking for a perception check. He knows the idol is sitting on a pressure plate. He says he pulls out the bag of sand he filled earlier, guesses the idol's weight, and attempts to swap the bag for the idol. This calls for a thievery check, so Indy rolls 1d20 plus his thievery bonus of 11 for a total of 22. And he succeeds? Maybe not, and you'll have to come back and watch part 2 of this video series to see how GM Spielberg uses Pathfinder's chase mechanics during Indy's escape from the tomb. So that's it for this video. If you haven't already seen my battle breakdowns for The Karate Kid and Fellowship of the Ring, make sure you check those out. They are linked in the description. And as always, I want to take a quick moment to thank everybody out there who supports me by subscribing to the channel, clicking the like button, buying a super thanks, subscribing to the Patreon, sharing the videos with your friends. I greatly appreciate everything the community does to support me. And with that, thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.